We all adore mountain bikes. Some of us stash them in our bedrooms, we love them so much. And we're guessing you probably feel the same as you're here watching this video. But that doesn't stop them being really bloody annoying at times. So here's my list of the things I hate most about mountain bikes. These days you can work out how much air to put in your fork just by looking at it. That's because there's a pressure chart printed on the lower leg, which is a brilliant idea, at least until you realise it's buried on the inside of the stanchion. Yeah, it looks better there, but it means you literally have to get on your hands and knees to work out how much air to pump in. And you'd better take your glasses with you too, because the font size is just ridiculous. Is that 90 psi or 900 psi? Just how does Fox and RockShox expect us to look like proper mountain bikers when we're crawling around the car park squinting at our forks? Modern mountain bikes are marvels of engineering. They can handle terrain impassable to any other vehicle. What they can't do, it seems, is use the same Allen keys throughout. And that means you need about a dozen tools in your hands at the same time just to make minor adjustments. Want to change the stem height? You're going to need a 4mm for the steer clamp bolts and a 5mm for the headset bolt. Then you'll need a Torx driver for the bolts for the brakes and the gear shifters too. And you're going to need 3 hands or a tool belt to put them all in. If you've got a full suspension bike, the shock can be just as annoying to adjust to. Very occasionally, the valve pokes out with just enough space to let you thread the shock pump onto nicely. But most bikes need the finger dexterity of a teenager to get the valve head on there. Would it really be so hard for shocks to have valves you can actually get to without skinning your knuckles? And heaven forbid you should have the audacity to run a coil shock. I hate trying to set the sag on a coil shock with a passion. Not only do you have to have a friend to check the sag you're running, to do anything about it, you're going to need a completely different spring and the tools to fit it too. There are so many things to hate about cable routing, it's hard to know where to begin. For starters, there just seems to be so much of it on some bikes, with the usual brake hoses and shifter cables now joined by lockout cables and even wires for your electronic shifting. The problems don't stop with the bar and stem though, oh no. Some bikes have cables that enter and exit at inexplicable intervals, giving easy entry points for water and mud. And the worst for last. The single most maddening thing about poor cable routing is the rattle. If those cables are not sleeved inside something, then your ride could quickly turn into a noisy nightmare, a cacophony of cable rattle. If that happens to you, don't throw your bike in the nearest bush. Yes, it's tempting, but instead get creative with some moto foam and see if you can pack out that space. This one. You knew it would be along soon. You're riding along happily one day, enjoying the sun on your back and the noise of the tyres on the dirt. But then you hear a new noise coming from down below. You ignore it and ride on, hoping it'll fix itself, pretending you heard nothing. But there it is again, louder this time, and by now it's all consuming and you just have to stop. And after turning the cranks over and bouncing that back wheel and squishing the fork, all without success, you head off again, but the noise is back, there to haunt you for the rest of time. We've all been there, I suspect. But the trick here is to keep calm and systematically work your bike over for dry or loose bolts, which accounts for 99% of creaks in my experience. Do this at home. If you've not fixed that pesky noise in the first 5 minutes by the side of the trail, you're not going to. I nearly died the other day when my brakes suddenly decided to change their bite point halfway down a run at Bike Park Wales. Imagine how cross I would have been if I really had died. Enough said. Since when did it become a good idea to have a big gaping hole in the middle of your saddle? Quite apart from the fact that saddles like this don't appear to be any more comfortable, it lets mud and water flick up onto your shorts. And bingo, you get an instant wet bum, even on rides where the rest of you might remain dry. If saddles must have slits in them for ergonomic efficiency, a short length of duct tape underneath usually solves the problem. I've got a love-hate relationship with tubeless tyres, in that I love them when they work, and I hate them when you're covered in sealant. Don't get me wrong, tubeless setups are so much better than tubes. I almost never get a flat tyre, and the choice of running low pressures is always there. But you've got to get the air in them first, which is a total lottery. Who hasn't played that game and lost? I'm a big Andy Darlow fan. The Dirt School coach is my go-to guy for skills. His advice is to get low on the bike when it's really steep and give yourself plenty of space to move around. That advice is completely useless though when bikes come with seat tubes tall enough to play in the NBA. I hate how it limits which size you can ride to. The choice of large or extra large is always a tough one for me, but I don't want it defined by which size I can actually swing my leg over. The travel should be in the seat post itself, not the frame. Threaded bottom brackets are better than press fit bottom brackets. I don't care that press fit is technically a lighter and more efficient option. In practice, they always end up creaking and they tend to need more maintenance. The threaded BB, on the other hand, is way more reliable, and you can also service things more easily yourself at home without the need for a removal tool and a press. I think I probably hate this one more than anything. The very thought of my hard-won leg power leeching away to nothing makes me mad, and even though it probably makes very little difference to my speed, it gets in my head. Suddenly the climbs seem ridiculously hard, and I'm nervous on the descents just in case I don't have the speed to clear a jump. And the worst thing is, 2 hours earlier, you know those brake calipers were lined up perfectly with the rotor. If this happens to me, the only surefire way to set it right is to get low. Yep, down on my hands and knees again. Loosen the caliper bolts slightly and ever so carefully line it up again. Just be careful to tighten the bolts slowly and in turn to prevent the caliper moving. Loosening off the bolts completely, then holding the brake lever on while you retighten the bolts sometimes works, but it's usually only on new brakes when you've just finished setting them up for the first time. There is another one that makes you look like a total dick in the car park too, and that's when the hub doesn't actually line up with the dropouts. Sometimes I'm there for what seems like minutes, trying to ram the fork axle through the front wheel. Surely wheel companies and fork brands could get together and have a chat about this. And while I'm on the subject of the car park again, I actually despise those steering limiters people like Nukeproof put on their bikes. I guess it's there so the bars don't spin round in the crash, but it's a pain in the bum when you're trying to lay a bike down flat in the back of your car. Actually, it can't be done. So that's pretty much everything I hate about mountain bikes. Although in actual fact, the more I think about it, the more I realise I really do love mountain bikes. And let's just say it's all worth it in the end. If you've got any pet hates though, please do share them in the comments below.